Let's look at the fantasy basketball waiver wire. Oh yeah, quick intro. Let's go, Michael.
Thanks, Josh. It's Michael Bolton here, and it's time for another episode of the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast. Let's get to it.
Let's get to it, indeed.
You are Locked On Fantasy Basketball, your daily fantasy basketball podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast, brought to you by Basketball Monster. My name is Josh Lloyd, and yes, I used to work at the Engadine McDonald's in 1997. I can confirm it is true. I'm also the lead fantasy analyst at basketballmonster.com, and you can find me on Twitter, as always, at redrock_bball, on TikTok, at redrock_bball, and on Instagram, at Locked On Fantasy Basketball. Today's episode is brought to you by PrizePicks, the easiest and the most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA. Use the code, all lowercase, LockedOnNBA, for a first deposit match up to $100. Thank you also for making Locked On Fantasy Basketball your first listen every day. We are free. We are available on all platforms. Thank you also for subscribing. And I know that you've already hit that thumbs up, and you're going to leave comments during the video, and you're going to go and pre-bang and pre-like over on the Trade Deadline Show. Remember when it's coming up? Thursday, February 8th, 1:30 p.m. Eastern. Someone said in a comment yesterday, man, with all these trades going down now, is your Trade Deadline Show just going to be recapping everything that's happened? Maybe, but there is definitely going to be trades on Trade Deadline Day. It's going to be, Moses Moody traded for, let's find a random player, Blake Wesley, and a 2027 protected second round pick. But we'll break it down when it happens. No, it's not true. There'll be something else that happens on Trade Deadline Day, but always remember that the majority of impacts on Trade Deadline Day are players losing value rather than someone gaining value to become a must-add player. Remember that part of it. Yep. All right. Let's talk about what we need to talk about. It is the fantasy basketball waiver wire, and we are going to start with the most added players. No, we're not. That is the wrong button. We're going to start with the must roster players. You already got a sneak peek of who the most added player was. Let's talk must roster players. We're looking at the short term, the next 2 weeks or so. Guys are available in over 35% of leagues, and we're going to start with category leagues. These are guys I think are all going to be top 100 in this time frame, and I just think you can't leave them on the wire. Number one, of course, is the rabbit hunter Alex Caruso. Why is everyone sitting on their hands on this bloke? I know he's white. I know he's bald. I know he's unsexy. I know he doesn't score points. Well, he's a little bit sexy. I'm sure his partner really enjoys lathering that head up in oil and rubbing it all over their body. Or that's what I would do. Who knows? Maybe that's a separate issue. But Alex Caruso puts up great fantasy lines continually. And unbelievably, knock on wood, he's healthy. He's playing consecutive games. He's playing big minutes. The skater boy's out. There's no excuse. There's no excuse for no Vince Williams either. He just slides under the cutoff here that I use at 65%. He's just got to be rostered everywhere, the big fella. Well, he's actually not that big, but he looks great, doesn't he? He's putting up numbers, which also makes you think, is he actually a future long-term starter? And the answer might be yes. Markelle Fultz, I believe, is a must roster player. This might not last, but we're seeing him starting now. He's not going to score 20 a game, but he might be 14, 5 rebounds, 6 assists, steal and a half. Hopefully a good field goal, hopefully. I don't know that it's going to last, but I do know that we should be grabbing him and seeing where it goes. There's a difference between, must roster is an interesting term, but can get misconstrued at times. I think that at this stage with Markelle Fultz, you just have to grab him. Someone has to have him. It might not last more than a week. It might not work at all. But I think you just can't leave it on the wire. Had this discussion with someone on the Basketball Monster forum page about Bruce Brown, who I'm not going to mention this show except that I just mentioned him now. They said, why is he a hold? I go, well, because I know he hasn't produced at a high level, but I just don't know where things are going. I don't know if he's going to be dealt to another team. I don't know if Gary Trent's going to be dealt to another team. I don't know if he's going to play more than the 23 minutes that he played, which seems crazy. He could jump into a 32-minute role somewhere. And sometimes it's just about that, like Fultz. He might go back and play 22 minutes and average 9, 4, and 4, and that's useless. But the value is there. So we go and grab, and then we just see. That's how I view that. It's not about what has he done, or how other guys have performed, or Jalen Suggs is doing this, or this, or this, or this. I just think we grab and we see. The Duck, Luke Kennard. I know he's questionable for today's game, but this is an elite three-point shooter who is a pretty solid ball handler. We would love him to be our 25-26 usage guy. That's probably not going to happen, but the role is relatively strong for him unless the fake injuries crop up, and I just think we add him. And the same goes with Jeremy Sohan, who is playing much better at the moment now. If Trey Jones does miss, I worry that he gets pushed back into a role that he can't do. But also, he just should be rostered. Simple. I also think Derek Lively should be rostered, but I will say this about Lively. I'm a little concerned at the way they're giving minutes to Muxie Kleber, who's played 20 minutes in 3 consecutive games. Lively does need 27 plus to be a must-roster player. And last game, I think he played 25 or 26. So it's iffy. But I'm not leaving it on the wire to figure out. If we see a consistent 25 Lively, 23 Kleber, then I'll go, all right, let's do that in 14 teams. But we're not there, so we add him. We make sure he's on a roster, Derek Lively, and then we make that decision to move on later on if we see that establish itself as a regular pattern. For points leagues, a lot of the names are the same here. Vince Williams, Markel Fultz, Jeremy Sohan. I've got Brandon Miller on that list. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't be grabbing Brandon in a category league, because I think you should. But his value in a points league is higher, because what he will do most likely is get a usage bump and a scoring bump. I worry about the efficiency from him. The last 3 games have been excellent. We detailed this on the Buy Low, Sell High show yesterday. But that doesn't mean that it holds. But in a points league, really good value. I've also got Jabari Walker on this list, who I didn't have on the category list. Also is a must roster, I believe, in category leagues. Just didn't quite make my cutoff. In a points league, his value is higher. I think he's got value right now, Jabari Walker, and I think it pushes higher later in the season. I don't know what happens when Shaden Sharp returns. So they go Brogdon, Simon, Sharp, Grant, and push Walker to the bench? Because the plan was that Sharp was going to start next to Simons, and Brogdon and Scoot would come off the bench. But even if that happens, I don't think Brogdon's going to be there. So I am having Walker on a team now, and I am holding, and I think it goes up. There might be a small dip, but I think it goes up. And the last one there is, of course, the Rabbit Hunter, Alex Caruso, who we do know is that must-roster player. Of course he is, because he is very, very good. Today's episode is brought to you by a new sponsor. It is Grammarly. It's a new sponsor to the show, but I've been using Grammarly for years because I do writing. It's not very good, but I do writing. I write articles on Basketball Monster. I write recaps of stuff over there every day. I might write notes on 70 players a day on Basketball Monster, but having Grammarly enables me to pick up mistakes that I've made. It enables me to check on my grammar, to make things more succinct, to make them more readable. They are all the things that they can do. They can also help you with writing prompts as well. Grammarly can help you get started with ideas, outlines, and even tips. I use it all the time. It's installed on all of my computers. I've got plugins for Grammarly. I use it consistently because it helps me. It helps correct my grammar. It helps spelling. It helps make things make more sense. It tells you if you've got run-on sentences. It tells you how to correct that, to make it easier to read, to simplify things. There's all those sort of things that there as well. You can use it in emails to summarize an email as well. Grammarly is an unbelievably important tool if you are someone who does any level of writing. Any level, reports, emails, schoolwork. Grammarly is key. Start being more productive at work. Go to grammarly.com/podcast and download for free today. That is Grammarly, GRAMMARLY.com/podcast. Today's episode is also brought to you by PrizePicks.com. PrizePicks is the largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America. Of course it is. It's also the most exciting and the most easiest way. The most easiest, that's not real words. Grammarly, you should have corrected me live on air. That is the easiest way to play daily fantasy sports. It's just player projections. They chuck up player stats and you just say more or less. You don't worry about thousands of people into a tournament. You don't worry about pros and sharks coming in there in a other sort of DFS situation where they take your money. That's not what it's about. With PrizePicks, it's you versus PrizePicks. It's not you versus me. It's not you versus John. It's not you versus Big Tom. It's not you versus the legend Sarah. It is you versus PrizePicks. So literally everyone can win except for those blokes. They chuck the projections up. You choose more or less between 2 to 6 of those. Go into a lineup and you can win up to 25 times your money back. It is that easy. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA. Use the code LockedOnNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. That is prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA. The promo code is LockedOnNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. PrizePicks is daily fantasy sports made easy. I realized when I was, as the subscribe button comes up, I didn't mean for that to come up, when I was doing that ad, that someone said to me the other day, man, because they were normally, they double banged actually. They were normally an audio listener and they jumped onto the video side. And they were like, man, do you realize that there are people who only hear your voice in 1.5 times speed? And I have that problem too. When I listen to people's podcasts, I do 1.9, but yeah, that's pretty fast. And then you hear them talk in real life or you meet them in real life, which is even worse. And you go and speak to them and you go, bro, speed it up here. What are you doing? But then I heard myself doing that ad and I am talking at 1,000,000 miles an hour. So I think if you actually spoke to me in real life and you were listening to me then on the podcast at 1.5 speed, or even listening on YouTube at regular speed, which, by the way, you can speed up YouTube's speed in terms of listening, you'd be pretty shocked at how slow, I'm not a slow talker, but I do speed up when I'm talking on the podcast, and that is approximately 60 seconds of information that you didn't need to know, and you'll never get the time back. So there you go. Who are some droppable players?
Get that garbage out of here!
Again, you do not have to drop these players. In fact, as the heading says, you don't have to drop these cats. You can just, you can drop them. Well, I've got no problem with it. That's what they're on this list for. To say, well, if we need to make a move, and do I feel super confident these guys are going to return value? The answer is no. And the number one on that list is Cam Thomas. Cam, there is a certain section, read every part of Brooklyn media, who just froths this guy to the extreme. And if you just read Brooklyn beat reporters, you'd be like, yeah, like they're doing this guy dirty. Man, they just need to give him all these minutes and all these chances. He's our future. Whereas me, noted Cam Thomas enjoyer, goes, bruh, like he's terrible. He scores, but he's bad. But they love him. But it doesn't matter whether I love him or whether they love him. It matters whether Jacques Vaughn loves him or Sean Marks loves him. And the answer is not really. I don't think you need to have Cam Thomas on your team. You can score. You can do that, sure. But what else? The answer is nothing. I don't think you need to hold. I don't think you need to hold Jollibee Jalen Green either. Green has really not taken many steps forward, or even if he has taken steps forward, they're not large enough to matter. He's poor in percentages, steals, blocks, rebounds. Assists have been better, but they're not great. Volume from scoring doesn't offset it. And now he gets benched and plays like 28 minutes a night some nights. You just don't need to hold that. Add him later on if you want. Dennis Schroeder. The minutes are plummeting. Now, I don't know what's going on with that team at the moment. There is a lot happening, and Darko's out here saying we're only going to play these players and give them opportunities if they're part of the long-term core, and then you see Dennis's minutes go from 30 to 23, and you go, oh, okay. Is he going to get traded somewhere? Maybe. Would any team want to trade for him to be a 30-minute-a-night starting point guard? Almost definitely not. So also be aware of that. And even in his best, yes, he killed it at the start of the season, but all that shit was completely unreliable. It was usage that was high, with efficiency that he's never done, on assist rate that he's never really done either, and it stopped after about 20 games. And now the minutes are down. So I think if you dropped Dennis Schroeder, you'd feel all right about it. Because again, how does he get back to that minutes, that usage, that efficiency, all coming together in a neat little package? And whenever you say neat little package, it just sounds like that episode of The Simpsons. What episode is it? Where Homer is like, and it sounds like super sarcastic. He's like, in a neat little package. And I can't remember what it is. Someone must tell me what it is. It's annoying me. Anyway, I'll figure it out later. The horse, Keldon Johnson. Much like Schroeder, in his bench role, he's not good. He will occasionally have the big scoring game, but it's the same old stuff with Keldon. And I just don't think he's a very good player. Also, that ties into it. I don't think he's a good player. The Spurs are going, yeah, maybe not that good. And he's in the bench, and he's still doing the things that he does, and he doesn't contribute in ancillary categories. And I don't think you need to hold him. Spencer Dinwiddie. He will have better games. Last game was atrocious. The three before were good. The ones before were atrocious. But that's sort of up and down, where Dinwiddie to me needs 34 minutes a night and to do stuff that he never does on the regular to be a 12-team guy. And he can do that for stretches of games. But when you've got the ability to play 18 minutes or 30 minutes and shoot 20% with no steals, no blocks, low volume threes, it's just not worth the hold. It's a stream guy. It's like a Harrison Barnes, who had a great game last time for the Kings, where he had 23 points. Or a Kevin Huerter, where his 2 games last week were amazing, and then he had 8 points in the next one. They can have those pop-off games. But how much do you want to trust it, to rely upon it, to use them on a regular game basis? You don't. And that's where I'm at with Dinwiddie. And the same goes with Bobby Portis. He will have the occasional big game, but the troubling sign there for him is that, I was going to say when Giannis is sat, they didn't even start him, but new coach. We've got medical professional Glenn Rivers, MD, in there now. Does he lean on Bobby Portis more? I don't know. I also don't care that much. Portis would be, it's to monitor. I just don't think that it needs to be a must-hold scenario. And for points leagues, only 4 guys really fit my criteria. A lot of the names are the same, Schroeder and Portis, but I've got Cam Johnson on that list as well. I think Johnson can be actually dropped in category leagues as well, because even last game, he shot well and played 25 minutes, and they're splitting him and Thomas's minutes. I don't get it, but that's what they're doing. He's obviously got scope to be better than this Cam Johnson, but in a points league, his value is already 40, 50 spots worse than what it is in a category league anyway. And if he's not producing in a category league, then what the hell are you doing in a points league? You don't roster him. And even the Wizard of Naz Reid, who can have the big game, and much like those guys I talked about earlier, it can happen. You can get a big performance out of Naz, but you also get an 18-minute game or a 20-minute game. And his value in a points league, as nearly everyone in a points league, it requires volume, it requires usage, it requires minutes and scoring. And he does it by being an efficient big man who blocks some shots, hits some threes. And that doesn't really mean jack shit in a points league. He's 155th for the season. You'd scoop him immediately if a Towns or Gobert was out long term, but they're not. So what are you doing? Just holding a handcuff? Usually, in most standard fantasy formats, that just isn't a strategy that works. And now the big reveal: who's on the must-added video transition? After I dropped it earlier on today, it is generic white guy shooter number 3, Sam Merrill, who's up 41%. And you know what? I added him today in industry pickup. Will it go terribly, terribly awry? Probably. But this guy's killing it. He hits threes at a ridiculous level. He takes every three in the world. He's almost the most unconscious shooter I've ever seen. Now, Malik Beasley used to be that guy who would take 12 attempts per 36. This guy's, I think, at 14. He just takes shots. He just takes them. But he's also getting assists somehow. I don't know how he's got time to process an assist when he's first thought he's get a 3 up. He's getting some rebounds. He's getting minutes. And if Karis LeVert remains out and Darius Garland is still out, Merrill's a huge value guy. Now, I don't know what they do with him once Garland returns, but I'll be honest with you, he's been better than Max Strus for weeks. I'm okay with having a grab, and that sounds wrong. I'm okay with acquiring Sam Merrill off the waiver wire and seeing where this goes, understanding that it might not last even a game, even though it has lasted for about 3 weeks. Shout out to the Bucks, who could really use a player like Sam Merrill, if only they had a player like Sam Merrill on their roster. Isaiah Stewart up 30%. His last game was awesome. They were almost going to be fully healthy today, the Pistons, and then Cade got downgraded from probable to questionable. Funny buggers? Maybe. Not great. I don't mind that ad of Stewart. I added him somewhere as well. Let's see how that plays out. My faith in Isaiah Stewart, as you're probably well aware, is definitely underneath my feet at the moment, but that doesn't mean it can't be successful. And the other one there is Lou Dort, the most added player. Cool. I mean, whatever. Drop him. He's a stream guy. The 3 most added guys on Yahoo: Brandon Miller. Spoke about him already. That's the result of the Terry Rozier trade. Everyone has jumped on. I get it. I would also, if I could get a top 70 player in a trade, I'd be amazed to do it. Just before people realize that maybe that efficiency doesn't hold. But yep, good at him. Dario Saric, who we've seen the Warriors play for the first time in about 10 days. He's fine. He played well last game. I'm not sure that it holds, but whatever. And then Timothy John McConnell with the Tyrese Halliburton injury kerfuffle. Should I side note this? I feel like side noting. I know I talked about the injury the other day, but I'm going to talk broader here. I should do like a side note, sidebar. May I approach the bench type graphic when I talk about this stuff. The NBA instituted these rules, this 65 game minimum for awards, right? Thinking, well, this will do it. This is going to curb this gigantic problem of all these players resting. To me, and I've been very vocal about this, is that I think that problem wasn't actually a real problem. But what about the families? The problem always has been this schedule. The problem was that certain loudmouth dickheads would get in media and parrot it out, and then disingenuous shit stirrers would get behind it as well and tell you that these entitled players are paid all this money and all they want to do is be lazy and not play and just sit there in their fashion clothes and never want to play. There are certain coded things in that language, 100%. And a lot of that conversation does come from certain people who do enjoy a coded takedown of somebody. That was never the case. The fact was that players were getting injured and using medical information to try and preserve themselves from getting injured to be more successful at the more important time of the playoffs, right? But people complained, and the image does become important. These guys, no one plays. They're sitting there. They're not even hurt. They just don't want to play. They're just lazy. No one wants to play. They get their money, and that's it. You should fine them every game they sit out. Take their money away. Again, not the problem. The team tells them to sit out, not the player. And then we introduced this rule, and we saw it with Tyrese Halliburton. Because he needs 65 games played to make an All-NBA team, and he is definitely in the running for it. And if he does, he earns $41 million more. And I could have another segment arguing the merits of having contracts tied to All-NBA. And the way that some of those voters handle that stuff is embarrassing. Maybe should I side rant that as well? Maybe I do. So Halliburton rushes himself back early before the reevaluation period of his injury, which should have been a 3-week injury, and now has hurt himself again. And what if he plays 64 games and is not eligible, and you cost him $41 million for some random arbitrary cutoff number? And someone commented, because I tweeted about this marginally last night, and someone said, yeah, as if, what a real problem that is, having a games played limit for awards, as if you probably want players to play. Yeah, that was already taken into account. That's why Joel Embiid did not win Rookie of the Year when he was very clearly the Rookie of the Year, because he only played 31 games. That is why he did not win that. Voters always took that into consideration. But having a hard cutoff is going to lead to these situations where players come back against medical advice, I believe, and cause further problems. And I think it could lead to a real problem. We'll find out. Anyway, TJ McConnell's been added, and he should be. Sorry for that side rant. And I know there's going to be a lot of you that disagree. There's going to be a lot of you that disagree with that. I just think that the problem was co-opted by disingenuous people and turned into something that it wasn't, when the actual problem is the schedule and not the players are lazy and are entitled because of their money, and therefore they just don't want to play and don't want to give the fans a show, which is, again, when you just sit and look at it, it is clearly bullshit. It's clearly bullshit. Most drop players.
Get that garbage out of here!
All right. Probably should have done something else then, but that's okay. We'll go through the most drop players right now, as I got sidetracked. Number 1 on this list is the Dart, Goga Badadze. He's basically out of the rotation, so that's cool. The Cockroach, Mason Plumlee. We got the old rug pull there. We got De'Aaron Fox on this one, because he started the first game with Zubats out, played 28 minutes, and they went, he's actually on a minutes limit, so we're probably going to have to hold him back, and he played 28. We go, what does that mean? And then he's played under 20 minutes the last 2 games, as they've gone with small ball, they've gone with Daniel Tice, they go with Russell Westbrook at center, and that you just can't hold through that. See you later, Cockroach. Kelly Oubre, down 15%. We know that.
Get that garbage out of here!
As I have said, and this is going to be very interesting with Terry Rozier. Oh, but Kelly Oubre scored 20 points a game. It's ridiculous that he took so long to sign on a minimum contract, but he was putting up numbers on a junk team. And his stats were junk, and he wasn't contributing to winning. And he's not that sort of a player. And that's why, and I had this argument with people a lot about him. I go, he's not that good. He scored 20 points a game because of the team he was on. I don't think that Rozier's a way better player than Kelly Oubre. I'm not saying that Rozier's like that. But he's also averaging 23 points a game this season, Terry Rozier. Let's see what happens when he goes to Miami. Does he average 15 a game? How does he fit in on a team that's real? Not whatever nonsense is going on down there. It's really interesting. And Oubre is struggling, obviously. The big sneeze, Precious Achiuwa, down 4,500 ads, or he's dropped in 4,500 leagues, because Tom Thibodeau decided the man that couldn't garner a single minute in any other game, Jericho Sims, deserves to play more. And you know what? I actually don't know if that's wrong or right, because I don't think either of them are good, but I know that Precious is bad. So yeah, go ahead and drop him. Spencer Dinwiddie been dropped. We talked about that already. And Josh the Hitman Hart, just shouldn't be a 12-team league player. He's a stream guy, and that is it. Today's episode is also brought to you by Hungry Root. Whether you're braving the cold or dealing with crowds, grocery shopping at this time of year, it is the worst. And I love that they've italicized that, because they want me to sing, but I'm not going to do it because I haven't warmed up my vocals. Why not stay home and let Hungry Root handle it? With Hungry Root, you can kickstart a week of healthy eating and get groceries delivered right to your door. You do a quiz on the Hungry Root app or website, and they find out your needs, your desires, your wants, your yearns, your preferences, your appliances that you love to buzz on at home. All of that stuff is there, and then they tailor the groceries. They give you suggested recipes, or you can just say, get that garbage out of here. I'm doing my own stuff. Just bring me the food, and I'll do that as well. Quality meat, quality produce, quality veggies. It's all there over with the Mad Rooters over at Hungry Root. So right now, Hungry Root is offering Locked On NBA channel listeners 40% off your first delivery and free veggies for life. Just go to hungryroot.com/lockedon to get 40% off your first delivery and get your free veggies. That is hungryroot.com/lockedon. Don't forget to use our link so that they know that we sent you. Get rooting with Hungry Root. Okay, so let's take a look at some hot players. Who are the guys who have been in the top 100 over the last week, and what do we do? Is it important? Number 1 on this list, Big Dick Nick Richards. Yes, he's a must-roster player. Obviously. Mark Williams might be dead for all I know. Shout out to Mark. I hope you're all right. I did not. he doesn't exist anymore. Nick Richards is back. He's probable to return from the ankle injury. Easy ad. Easy. The big fella, the minivan, Georgie Niang, is playing well at the moment. That's with Evan Mobley out. Now, he hasn't played well in every game with Mobley out, but he's on a nice little hot streak. That's probably more a 14-team league ad, but we love what he's doing. Sam Merrill, we talked about the value that he's providing. He's been ridiculous. Simone Fontecchio has been in the top 100 over the last week. That is largely bumped up because of his game in the last one. I think he's a solid 16-teamer. He's an okay 14-teamer. I don't think he's a 12-team league player, even though he's top 100 over the last week. He's in the stream list because he's playing 25, 26 a night, but his overall production isn't enough to be a must-roster guy. And the last guy, or next one, is Jalen Smith. Now, Sticks had a fake phantom back injury. That's not true. I don't know if that's fake. It's definitely phantom because it came out of nowhere. He had a back injury. Now, he had been playing at a pretty okay level, but he is a backup. He's not going to get 25 a night. He's going to back up Miles Turner. And even then, there might be some battle from Toppin or Jackson to get some of those minutes too. So while he has put up some good numbers, I don't trust that any more than being a 14-team level guy. And the other player on this list is Duop Reath. And we talked about Reath and Ayton yesterday. Ayton stinks. He's annoying. Can't stand the guy as a player. Like, I hate watching him play. Hate it. But Reath is not the center of the future. He's 3 years older than Ayton. Could they bench Ayton for Reath? Maybe. Would that be the best thing for the team? Also maybe. Is Ayton better than what he's currently showing? Yes, as much as I don't like the player. Is Reath worth a 12-team ad? I don't really think so, but I'm not going to be against you doing it. Like, he's produced over the last week. That's with Ayton on these weird minutes limits and also being limited as a player. So, I get it. Reath's playing well, but I don't really have super confidence in that being a thing moving forward every single day as man, we've got to get this guy. But as we know, if you believe in it, get out ahead. Ride what's happening currently and see how that comes off for you. Some injury replacement players. Who are some guys that have got a bit of a bumped role because of guys that are out? We'll start in Chicago with no Zach LaVine. We've got Patty Williams there, and we've got Ayo Dosunmu. Both guys were basically equivalent in the last game, and I would still prefer Williams over Dosunmu marginally, but I think both can be rostered, both can be tried out. Dosunmu is definitely more of a guarantee in 14s, but you can look in 12s as well. I wouldn't rush to add both. I think it's sort of just a flip a coin scenario and see which one you want, but there is some value for both of those players. I've got Xavier Tillman there, injury replacement, because now Santi Aldama's out. Now, last game, Tillman returned, and they put Tillman off the bench and Aldama started. Now, Taylor Jenkins could easily start worst rotation player in the league, David Roddy, instead of him. Again, would be silly, but this is Taylor Jenkins, who's made inexcusable roster rotation decisions for years, even when the team was good. Remember that. But I do believe that Tillman should be rostered, and we'll see, like, if they go back to him being an 18-minute-a-night player, like, out of nowhere, then sure, we move on. But we don't at the moment. I've got Jericho Sims there, who did have 4 blocks in the last game. I don't believe that Jericho Sims is a 10 or 12-team league player. I believe he's at least going to be streamable for some of those defensive stats and field goal percentage. He'll have 2% usage with 2 points. And I don't think the minutes are secure at all. He had big minutes in the first half of that last game. What he played? I'm trying to think what he played. He played 18 minutes in the first half and then 8 minutes in the second half? So who knows? They might start Achura in the next one. They might have Sims as a 14-minute-a-night starter. I don't know. But there's at least something there. I've got Andrew Nembhard because I've already talked about McConnell. Nembhard was okay in the last game. I wouldn't rush to add him. He's more of a 14-team league guy. The value long-term isn't there. I just don't think he's particularly good. Every single game he gets outplayed by TJ McConnell, yet he still gets more of those minutes. And at some point I'm thinking Carlisle's going to snap and go, no, let's get the better player in there. This actually same thing happened last season when Halliburton went down, is they would give the minutes to Nembhard for the first few games. They were like, this is ridiculous. And then McConnell got him. And then they were able to play much better. It hasn't happened this season yet. It doesn't mean it won't. Still think he's worth a look. And the last one there is Dean Wade, who, if you're in a category league and you're in like a 14-teamer, Wado is starting in place of Mobley. Probably the most nondescript, quiet starter in the NBA. But he's just doing little bits and pieces. Defensive stats are up. He's shooting the ball well again. He's producing across categories in little small amounts, which adds up to having value. And he's available like everywhere. And in 14-team leagues, he should be at least part of your consideration. Lastly, what are some other names that we just need to pay a little bit of attention to here as we end the week? We've got 2 rookies to start things off. We've got Nick Smith Jr. in Charlotte. He has got horrible per minute numbers at the moment. He's shooting the 3-ball okay, but his 2-point percentage is it's ghastly. It's ghastly. He doesn't get rebounds or assists or steals or blocks. He might get more minutes with Rozier gone and Kyle Lowry not playing. He's going to have to. that doesn't mean that he's going to be, I think, quite a destructive fantasy player and not destructing the other team or destroying the other team. That would be Grammarly. That would be the correct word. He could destroy your team in a big way. But we've got to watch it because the opportunity is here. And Amen Thompson has been great the last 2 games, but they're healthy now. So where do they put him in? 18 minutes? Not enough. 25? Getting there. 28? Bang, add. It's just so hard to see how it happens, but we watch it. I got Scooter Henderson there. Sterling was great, plus 17 last game, but of course, you got to give those minutes to Malcolm Brogdon. You got to pump up his trade value. You got to showcase him. Has anyone here ever heard of Malcolm Brogdon before? Heard this bright new up-and-comer who's got the world at his feet? Anybody heard? Brogdon? Is that how I say it? Anyone heard of him? Anyone seen him play before? Has he ever won any like NBA hardware, 6th man of the year, rookie of the year? Have we ever seen him do that on a successful team before? I don't know. I guess we better just pump minutes into him so we can tell the other GMs just what we've got here. Anyway, Scoot was really good off the bench in the last game. He had the best plus-minus on the team. It's a rocky road. I don't think that you have to roster him. If you are willing to hold through a bunch of very big ups and very big downs, sure. I'm also pretty sure Brogdon's not going to be playing in 2 weeks on this team. So let's take a look at it. Bilal Coulibaly, good minutes last game, good blocks. It's going to require a trade, I think, for him to really elevate into big fantasy numbers. And even then, I don't think he's got the full fantasy profile to be this must-roster guy. But we're keeping an eye on it. Dennis Smith, another one here. If Dinwiddie does go the way of the dodo and plays 20 minutes a night, then Smith's the guy to add. But how do we trust it? But if I'm going to tell you that we're looking at dropping Spencer Dinwiddie, then I've got to tell you that Dennis Smith's at least on the watch list ad board when you're looking for a rebound, assist, steals, blocks, point guard, which there's 2 of those in the NBA. 3 of them. One of them Shea. The other one's Chris Dunn. Trey Murphy is the other name on this list. And that's not because I'm saying to go and add him. I'm saying that I think you can drop in certain situations. Jordan Hawkins coming for his minutes. Herb Jones playing ahead of him. They are rolling. It's going to take an injury for Murphy to be a locked 12-team must. Now, as always, you're sitting well, hold him. Who cares? If you need to do it, you do it. But if you need the spot, I don't think you should feel too bad about moving on from Ken Murphy III. And that moves us on from the end of this show. Maybe in another show, I'll give you my thoughts on the award voting situation. We'll see. Don't forget to go and watch the trailer for the Trade Deadline show. Pre-like and pre-bang on the Trade Deadline Live page. Let's hit 1,000 likes and let's get 20,000 people in there watching. A ridiculous goal. But why not? We can do it. I'm sure we can do it. Who wouldn't want to see me react in live time to stupid trades that happen? And let's hope that some of them involve the Pistons. Guys, we are done here. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. See ya.